It's 10 o'clock, sorry to cut you off, Gary. We're just gonna get rolling. Okay, we'll call the administration committee meeting for Thursday, November 5th to order. And we have, I want to welcome Mr. Duffy as one of our new members of the admin committee. Appreciate you accepting, Mr. Duffy. We have roll call. I just talked to Mr. Schluter, he'll be here in a minute. So let the record indicate we have a quorum, Carol. Certification of compliance with open meetings law, we're complied.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Agenda is presented. Anything moving on into public comment? Is there anybody online?
Diane is. Donna, I'm sorry, I don't want to butcher the name. Donna and Sherry are on.
Okay. Andrew?
No.
Okay. Moving on into number 5 minutes from our previous meeting, admin, October 8, 2020. Mr. Schwender?
Motion to approve.
Okay, I got a motion by Mr. Schwender, second by Mr. Kingsley to approve the meeting minutes as presented. Is there any further discussion? If none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, Gary, Veterans Service Department report. Thank you for attending.
Yep. Good morning. So for October, we had 356 phone calls, 180 letters, and 64 office visits. Up to that date, we had 57 disability pension claims that we had put into the VA, and so far collected $323,872.25 in initial payment to claims decided in the veteran's favor. So our training is up to date. Michelle is good. I'm good for the year, and so we're pretty happy about that. I ended up, I did virtual training versus in person. I cut about $160 off the cost, and was able to get my training done that way. So our Veterans Service Office report, once a year, I get the data from the federal and the state VAs. And so I'm able to put together basically the office's report card for 2019 in the back. In a nutshell, we brought in over $957,554 back into the county through disability compensation and pension claims, medical care, home loans, burial benefits, insurance indemnities, education benefits, vocational rehab, employment, and Wisconsin disabled veteran property tax credit. That number does not include the money saved by our counseling for the year to our combat veterans. Is for the general information, the background information for the office is how busy we were. We had a little over 17,000 phone calls in 2019, 67 veterans deaths, and processed for those deaths 145 different claims, and transported 202 veterans to the Minneapolis VA. So.
Great, Mr. Kingsley.
Go ahead.
Good. Okay. So I listed some outreach that we did in 2019. In our accreditation training, how important that is in the back too. It's just basically summarizing. We're nationally accredited. Michelle's nationally accredited, which is awesome. And we've got Care of Veterans Graves. I talked to you about that earlier this year about the monies. We were getting close to the $6,000 limit we had in 2019. As you can see, it was 524. I thought based off that we'd be good, but then COVID hit, and there was 2 other cemeteries that decided they needed to look for other ways to find some money that was available to them through the county. So that's why I asked to have that bumped up. So it'll should cover next year. Okay. And Veterans Relief Fund for veterans that find themselves in, dire need financially, no fault of their own. We have a veterans where they can come in and to the Veterans Commission and apply for grant money. And we had 3 last year in 2019. So, and then to summarize the department relationships, basically who we work with most often here in the county and statewide, and so obviously the federal. So that is it. If you have some time, you can take a look at it. But I think for the money the county expends for our office, and I'm not somebody to brag, but for the total cost of our office for what we bring into this county is
Huge.
yeah, it is huge.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Great. Mr. Kinsley?
Question, Gary, if I may, regarding veteran deaths and burials.
Yep.
I'm kind of in the dark. How does that work? They don't cover all the expense. How does that, can you explain that briefly?
yeah. Well, like everything, it varies based on the law and the individual. So if it was a veteran served, let's say 4 years, and honorably was discharged, and they never got sick or injured on service, so they never had any kind of VA compensation or pension coming in. The VA, we will apply for a flag, get funeral honors and a marker for that veteran. That's the basic package, if you will, for those veterans. For veterans who were service connected, maybe for hearing, and they died of a heart attack later on, and that was the only thing that was wrong with them in the service, then the VA would provide marker, funeral honors, and what am I missing? Marker, funeral honors, and flag, and about $325 to offset the cost. It's just to offset cost for burial benefits. And this is, I'm talking federal only, okay? So versus a veteran who served 4 years, who picked like Vietnam, in-country Vietnam, or blue water or brown water, and where they were subjected to Agent Orange exposure, had a heart condition due to that, and it was service connected, and they died of the heart attack, then they would get flag, funeral honors marker, and $2,000 to offset the veteran's funeral costs. Not only that, but if the veteran was married, and for, you know, and not within a year, and her service connection, there's multiple different things, variables, but I would normally go for the spouse and apply for dependent indemnity compensation on top of that, which today's day rate is around $1,258 a month in compensation to the spouse for losing their husband or wife due to a service-connected condition, and that will follow them until they pass away. And then on that part it sounds substantial, it is, but really what's substantial out of getting the dependent indemnity compensation is I can apply for the spouse to get insurance, CHAMP VA insurance, which they don't have to pay for. They have co-payments for medications and co-pays like normal insurance does, and they're quite low, but they don't have to pay for the insurance. And that is huge for some of these spouses. So, what else can I hit on the death benefits for that? But that's I guess that's basically it in a nutshell. Is there something more specific?
No, you hit what I was looking for, and I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you for taking the time to explain.
Yes, sir.
Gary, what is the morale amongst our veterans coming in? I know you were very concerned earlier during COVID. Have you seen any?
For morale,
Yeah, I mean,
in what way?
either way, I guess I'm looking at it. Because I know you were very concerned a month or two back about even your safety. I mean, they were coming in pretty depressed and.
They're probably the most capable people of doing things quickly and efficiently, more so than untrained people. It doesn't mean that we have, everybody's struggling. But we do have a few, and I try to take care of them, and get them the help that they need. So, suicidal is one thing, homicidal is another with veterans. So the suicidal people, so far we've done fairly well. Some of them found themselves in deep stuff. Maybe they done something wrong, or maybe they've been accused of doing something wrong on top of it. Normally what I see, and it's like anybody else would tell you, I think, in the profession of, mental health or what have you, is usually it's tied. Mental health is tied to drugs, mental health is tied to alcohol, or alcohol is tied to drugs. Drugs are tied to mental health. It's like two of the three combinations, and those are always bad. And then you add something else in, that bad things happen. They're in trouble with the police. Now they're having marital problems, or you can go down the list, and it stacks up on them pretty fast. In this COVID stuff, and being shoved into little rooms with nothing to do.
Isolation.
Yep, it is not good, So, you just keep lumping stuff on the pile, and you wonder why it stinks. So it's just not good. So I try to get them through as fast as I can. We can still get them help. Some of it's virtually, and it's not the best sometimes for some people, where others would rather do face-to-face, but we're making it work. I haven't lost anybody to mental health. What I've lost people to is bad policy in getting people medical help that they need, physical medical help, not mental medical help that they need. I almost lost another one last month in October. They showed up, they couldn't get help. They come in to me, I got them help. We got them in, he checked them into the emergency room. They found a couple things wrong. Then they took him in, they admitted him. And then 3 days later, went to put him out. He walked out, and he was smart enough to turn around and walk right back in. So they finally got him up to some place where they could help him, and they did help him, and he's alive. So, but it comes back down to, if you don't have an appointment, you're not getting in. You're not getting in. And damn, this virus, it might be shit, but really what stinks is all these people that are really hurting. That's going to be the biggest, in my opinion. When we look back on this, that's going to be the major loss. The people that had other conditions that could not be seen. So,
Let me comment on that, Gary. At Health and Human Services, where Dale and I attend, I wanted to address Julie, our public health official, exactly that. Because even at our Coudray Health Center, we're turning away people with diabetes and hypertension as long as they're taking their meds, because we don't want to expose them to COVID or expose the medical staff to COVID. But yet we're not addressing those other issues, those what we call comorbidities. And if we don't keep them in check, they're going to go downhill, COVID or not.
And you're probably asking the wrong person, to tell you the truth, sir, about what I think about this. Because I went to the front line, we stood at the front line, and we took care of the job at the front line for the United States military and for the United States. We were the front line. We didn't, when we were supposed to be the front line, we didn't run to the back and cover in our basements. And that, or put policies up to block. It doesn't work. So I'm sorry.
No, thank you.
But they should be up at the front line, and that's where they need to be, these people that are providing health. So, and if they can't do it, maybe it is time to find something else where they can help assist and get somebody up there that's healthy enough to do it in these cases. So that blanket policy is not good, in my opinion.
How's transportation? Earlier that was an issue. Are you?
Doing okay. I've got one driver, but it really, and I've got people using it. So we're doing all right now. When it picks up, I'm gonna have to go find another driver again, but it's kind of hard to find somebody motivated to show up at work at 4:30 in the morning in the middle of winter to drive 3.5 hours through the city,
Yeah.
and be good enough keepers to miss the deer and know where the white and yellow lines are.
Thank you, Gary. Anything
Yes, sir.
else for Gary? Anybody online, Mike?
No.
Okay, appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Okay, moving on to number 7, information technology, Mike.
Good morning. Apologize, I must have forgotten to submit my report, Carol. Just a few projects, just in the last week or so, helping Human Services Department buy about 20 computers. They should all be funded. The Child Protective Services area needs to get Windows laptops. The reason there is because there's a big security hole that we had to close up. And so they had to stop using their iPads and are going to start using Windows machines. So there's about 7 laptops coming for them. Public health, mostly the contact tracing people, 4 more laptops for them. That should all be grant funded also. And then another 9 or so laptops for administration and supervisors for working from home, and that should be covered by CARES funding. I just did the buying and configuring, and they're taking care of the grant funding. So that was a big project that we undertook this week. We completed a project where we installed a intrusion detection system. It looks at all network traffic, and if it finds anything that looks like it could be suspicious or malicious, it flags it right away and alerts us no matter when it is, day, night, weekends. And so that'll help us to respond better to things like malware, encryption, malicious encryption, or other, especially whether they're local or state-sponsored terrorists. Let's see. We're the project where we're replacing the jail inmate phone system. That's been going on for a while, but that should be done, I believe, next month, or actually maybe later this month. That'll help with canteen funds that allow people to talk to the inmates over the internet. We are working on a permit system. Many of them are digitized now. And we're going to put them in our Laserfish system, so they'll be more searchable online. So that project will be done probably in a week or 2. Let's see. Other than that, just some other miscellaneous activities. A lot of help desk. We get 5 to 10 calls a day for assistance, and that's typical. Those are all the big projects that are going on.
Right. Mike, when you say grant funded, is that Routes to Recovery state grant, Tom? Is that what he's talking about, or?
Routes to Recovery, yes.
Okay, yeah. Great.
I have a question. I don't know exactly what I could do. The reason I ask is there going to be any changes in the tax program? And sometimes I know you get involved in that, which you're very helpful with. That's what I'm wondering.
Diane is on. Go ahead, Ben. She's got her hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Diane.
There are no changes that we can see in our tax receiving program.
Thank you.
We're hoping to have a virtual meeting with the treasurers, but nothing's been finalized on it yet.
Thank you.
Anyone else for Mike and IT? Okay, thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. I appreciate you being here too. Thank you. We ask you all the time for now. Okay, number 8, human resources. Rose,
Okay,
report.
submitted the report, recruiting for a.
Why don't you come over here by the microphone?
Thank you, Tom.
Sure, thankful today.
We're recruiting for a few positions. A full-time register of deeds, well, we're gonna start recruiting for that. That person took a different position within the county. Full-time district attorney secretary, driver operator out at the highway, and the shop foreman position out at the highway. We've got applications for both of those positions, but we're having unexpected absences out there, so that's just gonna be delayed a little bit. The youth justice supervisor, we had an interview for that position yesterday. Went well. And Paul is, there's been no decisions made on that. COVID, we've got a lot of active COVID in and around our area and in our employees. So we're working through a lot of issues with that.
Rest of the world is good.
It's good. It's all good.
Rose, I sent you an email regarding the CCS service facilitator
Mhm.
resigned. You do, who does an exit interview with these people?
I did an exit interview, yes. We
Okay.
do with all
Can
people
you
that.
share some of that, or why does that seem to be a revolving position? We don't pay enough, or it's too stressful, or? And I don't know if you were at Health and Human Services, but Mr. Schweter got bombarded with these questions and why CCS is always looking for people and why they're not able to bill as adequately as they should be.
I do know that the note-taking and documentation requirements are quite stringent for that area. That seems to be a common theme that I hear. We have been very fortunate in all of our recruitments for that position. We've had some good people in that position. So it's not that we haven't been able to hire. As for the retention, that might be a question better asked of Paul or maybe the unit supervisor.
And we did ask him. Yeah, Mr. Schweter.
Yes, we asked them, we got the standard answers. So I think that's something that we need to be looking at.
That sounds vague and ominous.
Without going
Is there an
into-
elephant in the room that we're not talking about?
Well, no, there's just a concern within Health and Human Services that CCS is a billable department and there were budget impacts. And because they're billable, they were to be sustainable and not something in the budget that we have to supplement. So that came up that we have people in that position that are not trained to be billable, so it was gonna start impacting the budget. Am I right, Dale?
Yes, and the other thing that we talked about was the caseload. Perhaps the caseload is just too large for the person that they expect to do to take care of it. The caseload is 6. Somebody pointed out that they have almost one whole day a week to take care of each one. If it sounded ominous, it's because I have a problem believing that trained people cannot complete the paperwork for one case in the better part of the day.
Right.
Something else has to be happening, whether it's morale, whether it's for leadership, whether it's not enough money. I don't know what's happening. As Rose mentioned, we have good people applying. They understand what the wages are going to be, and yet we still can't retain them. The training period maybe is inadequate. Maybe there's not enough support during the training. These are things we need to figure out. As Tweed said, I was asked a whole bunch of questions last Tuesday night. Didn't have the answers.
So who asked you the questions? Was it the department or?
the members of the
Committee.
Yep.
So we have a director that's saying things are great. We're having a unit supervisor saying that things are great. Our HR person says that, you know, there's no information to be gleaned from the exit interviews, but yet we have good people coming in and everyone's leaving. So there seems to be a disconnect in here somewhere. And from my former time on the Health and Human Services Committee, there's always been some dynamics that have always been interesting for people to work with. Is there an effort to address those dynamics? Because if that's what's at play here and everyone's afraid to talk about it, we're in a budget crunch where we're losing dollars. And so we're either going to remain silent and let this stuff continue, or we're going to take the affirmative steps to address it.
Mr. Hofke here to.
Yeah, well, some of the information, you know, that we get in the exit interviews and elsewhere, you know, are not probably appropriate to talk about in an open committee meeting. So that's information that we're taking and dealing with. And I think, yeah, there probably is an elephant in the room, but, you know, you can't talk about the elephant. And, you know, it's not the jurisdiction of the committee to decide that, you know, it needs to happen internally. And so those are the things that we need to address and find out. I mean, I think we are finding out where some of the issues are. And
I would say that we're pretty smart people. I mean, we make this county work for all the years that we have, and yet we still seem to come up with this weird inability to address the tensions or whatever that comes out of Health and Human Services. And so we either need to do that, or we're going to lose other good people are going to want to go somewhere else because they're going to find a better environment somewhere else. And it's going to come from a lack of leadership in addressing it. So if someone's been here for 30 years and they've always done it that way, you know, time for a change. I mean,
Well, Mr. Schluter, Health and Human Services Board Chair, is going to put it on the agenda next month, and maybe we need to have an executive session, Mr. Schluter, to discuss this further.
You mean
Especially
closed session?
the findings of an
Yeah,
exit interview and why the retention is so poor
Okay.
in that area. Do you have anything more to add, Tom, Mr. Kinsley?
well, I think, you know, the committee can talk about those things from a policy perspective if they want to, yes.
No, I agree, because anything more would be micromanaging, and that's, we need to stay away from that.
does the committee have the ability to hire the Director of Health and Human Services?
No,
Who does?
I do,
So, but you report to the board,
yes,
and we have the ability to hire and fire you, right?
you do, yes.
So if there's a chain of command here where we're not having the employees responding to the issue, and we can't seem to get to the heart of what the issue is, then it's a lack of leadership. We need to, there has to be a place in there where someone steps up and says, all right, enough is enough, we're going to address this.
Yep, and we're addressing it.
Agreed.
I want to assure you that. Mr. Kinsley.
Well, I'm just thinking when you said executive, is that saying a closed session? Is that what
Yes.
you mean by that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah.
It's, you know, Ojibwe, executive means closed session. Thank you, please, flipping the scripts there.
Okay, anything else for Rose and HR?
Do you want to address where we're at with health insurance and the HRA and just kind of touch on that?
Yes, we did get we're working with a different vendor to bring in, to handle our HRA and flex spending accounts. The health insurance, we did get a renewal back. It's going to be 6.5%. We're going to stay with Anthem. We're shopping out the ancillary lines like the disability insurance and dental vision to see if we can get a better product for the employees. Did I miss anything?
Just on the HRA side, we're switching vendors that provide the HRA servicing and making some changes to how the HRA works based on what we've learned as far as compliance and also beneficial for the county. Historically on the HRA, you know, we've got a high deductible health insurance plan that's supplemented by a contribution to health reimbursement account. So that's a county funded health reimbursement account dollar amount that kind of lowers our premium. So overall, theoretically, then our county costs are lower because we have a high deductible plan supplemented by an HRA. But the HRA, the way that had been set up previously, and the way the dollars rolled over into the next year, we're making some changes there. One of the things that you look at, as you look at our general fund balance, and there's a large portion, that there's different sections to fund balance, one being unallocated fund balance, and that's that number that we look at, that we don't want to go below 20% of an unallocated fund balance. And then there's restricted and some other classifications. But as you look at those HRA dollars that roll over, that's a liability of the county that takes away from our unallocated fund balance, because we've got to restrict those dollars for future payments for those HRA dollars. So one of the things that we're doing is not allowing that to roll over to the subsequent year. We'll fund it each and every year for employees for that current year, but not roll it over and create this ever-growing liability for the county. So, from the employee's perspective, they won't have this big bucket in the future. Anybody that has a big bucket now, that'll continue. So we'll grandfather those in. So nobody's going to lose anything. But going forward, you won't be accumulating this bucket of dollars that will be a liability for the county until they use it. So the health insurance will still kind of work the same, but the liability and the dollars having to be expended by the county will be reduced. So it's a cost-saving measure, and anything that we do, has benefits and bad. You can't just have your cake and eat it too. So there are, those are the things that we're kind of balancing to make sure that we don't totally take away employee benefits, but yet something that is reasonable and, that we can afford to kind of balance those things out. So those are the changes that we're kind of working through with this new company to get set up for the new plan year. Is that
Yes.
okay?
How are the employees taking this plan?
Well,
For, against?
we are going to roll it out on November 12th. We're going to do virtual open enrollments. There probably will be some concern about it, but we did find out that part of our current plan, we were not in compliance with certain aspects of the HRA. Like having a standalone HRA, we can't have that, and we have had that. And so we had to make a change.
You had to clean it up.
Yep.
And it's still gonna stay the 8812, right?
Yes.
88 employees are plus for 12. That is a great. Okay, anything else for HR? If not, thank you, Rose.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to number 9, County Administrator Report, Mr. Hoff.
Okay, this past month has been crazier and crazier. It just never stops. But and a lot of it has been just working through, the budget, getting that prepared. So we've got, the public hearing tonight, obviously, and then the budget adoption next Tuesday. So Mike and I have been working furiously trying to make sure that all of those T's are crossed and I's dotted. I's dotted. Yeah, it didn't sound right.
No.
Yeah. So we'll be thankful that process gets over with here next week. Some other issues, as Rose kind of alluded to, the COVID issues, especially within the courthouse, and how we handle employees and work areas. We sent out some information to department directors this past week about if you can work remotely, please do. We've still got a lot of employees that are working remotely when they can. Some obviously can't because of the nature of their jobs, but those that can work remotely, that is beneficial, because as we run across employees that end up with a positive case and they've had close contacts with other people in their departments, then there's the potential of wiping out a whole department. So we're still trying to keep people out, or at least rotating, so that we don't expose a whole department or wing or whatever to that exposure. And then there's also, the benefit part of that. Obviously, the county has been following closely the guidance that comes out as far as what you can and can't do. You know, and then there's, you know, like the added 80 hours that the employees get for, you want to just kind of explain what that is?
Sure. So when the Families First law came out, part of that is employees can get 80 hours of emergency sick leave is kind of how we refer to it. So if they are exposed, test positive, or they have to quarantine, they get a pool of 80 hours that does not tap into their regular accruals. It's like 80 extra hours. Certain people were excluded, certain employees were excluded from that act, but the county made a separate pool of 80 hours. So like EMS, law enforcement, public health, you know, there were certain areas that were excluded. They also have access to these 80 emergency sick hours that they can use if they are exposed or test positive. And so far, well, as of yesterday afternoon, we know about 32 employees that have had to use that time. That's in 9 different departments. So it's out there.
Can some of those employees work from home, Rose?
Yes, some of those, well, the people that are not using the time that are maybe positive or have been exposed, that are still working from home, that's not included in the 32 hours.
I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
Should let them recover, I mean.
Yeah, so then, you know, it's balancing, you know, the reason that some people were exempted from that is because they're deemed to be essential employees. And so, you know, balancing, you know, the essential employees and how we put them to work. And if they are quarantining, you know, we obviously don't want them in the workforce exposing other people to the possible COVID exposure. So trying to work through those issues on a case-by-case basis as they come up has been challenging. But we're working through those. We talked in Land Committee on Wednesday morning, the Perch Lake high water situation. So we did get a report back from our engineers that we hired through our insurance company to look into the causes of that Perch Lake high water issue. It is a seepage lake, meaning there's not a inflow or outflow into that lake, but there is high water that's causing certain homes to be flooded in that area or potentially flooded. So we've got data on, you know, what happened. There was some assertions that the county did something to Highway B 40 years ago that may have affected the high level water currently. And the report, the engineering report, shows that's not one of the causes of that high water at this time. So the county's not liable or responsible for the high water, but that doesn't mean that we can't help look for a solution in coordination with the DNR and the folks who are concerned in that area. So continuing to work on that issue as well. On this Monday, the city will be looking at that agreement that this board passed with you know, the 5th Street California Avenue option. So we'll be looking forward to that and can report on that next Tuesday then, you know, what happened at the city on Monday evening. Also, the opioid lawsuit that has been ongoing that the county is a part of. We get updates on that. We had a conference call yesterday on the status. They're looking at, you know, potential settlements with at least 4 of the defendants there, but that's, you know, we won't know anything until, you know, there's official word. So we get updates, but there's not a lot of details in those updates at this point, but that is a lawsuit that's still continuing. We talked a little bit about some things in Health and Human Services with regard to you know, the high cost placements and the costs that we incur. And this is, you know, part of the budget discussion as well. You know, we put together a budget, you that's pretty status quo for all departments. We're able to get some things under the levy limits. We're doing some things different with the capital program, and that we're issuing some debt for the capital items in that plan. But the biggest hole or biggest problem that we will continue to have are these high cost placements, mental health issues in the Health and Human Services area. So, the budget is built around the fact that, we haven't budgeted to cover all of those costs in the past because they're starting to skyrocket. And fortunately, we've been able to cover those with Health and Human Services dollars where they haven't expended all of their budget. So their fund balance, and Health and Human Services has their own fund balance, and that's been increasing each year. So it's a fund balance of over $1 million in Health and Human Services currently. But we're going to blow through that fund balance pretty quickly if we have to expend it on these high dollar placements, which we do. So in Health and Human Services, we talked about the alternatives of cutting services to ensure that we pay those things out of tax dollars, or continuing at least through this year to look at using that fund balance to pay for those overages if need be, while we work through some legislative possibilities. And so as I talk with the other northern administrators, those are the surrounding counties up here, we all have the same issue, and we've all decided that that's our number one priority. As we look at all the things that affect the counties and where the big problems are, this is really our biggest problem. And so as we talk with other counties, and we're actually having a meeting on November 16th with the all counties to talk about priorities statewide. And this is from the administrator perspective. We're the ones who build the budgets. We know where the holes in the budget are, and this is our biggest hole, at least in the northern area. And we talked in the meeting on Tuesday. It's like, well, all you do is talk. Well, yeah, as Mr. Schleter knows, he's gone down to Madison with us 3 times a year to talk to the legislators. There's no, it's not just because we say, hey, this is a problem, that they're going to give us a solution. I mean, they have willfully put the problem upon the county by switching state funding to county funding. And so they're not going to have an appetite to say, oh, well, we'll switch it back and we'll take care of those costs. That's going to be a hard sell. But we will continue to try and sell it and get some help in that area, because it is a burden on a lot of the counties. So, it's not that we aren't doing anything. We're trying a couple different avenues, and this is a new one that we're undertaking. Gail, did you have a question?
I like the idea of the northern counties, folks in your position getting together and going after this. Why is it limited to, you made it sound like this is a problem for the northern counties and not necessarily so for the southern counties. I question that because, yes, Milwaukee County's budget is humongous, but they've also got a very much larger population than we have. And percentage-wise, especially all crammed into a city, I can't believe that they have a lower percentage of patients who need this type of long-term care than we do. The problem that we faced when we went down under the CAP program was, oh yeah, I'll have so-and-so get, one of my staff people get this information to you. Nothing ever happens.
Yeah, and so maybe I didn't quite state that properly. Yeah, and I meant to say that because we've had these conversations with the other northern counties, and so this has been helpful in this and other areas, Bayfield, Ashland, Washburn, our group of counties that we talk to, and we've identified this as a number one issue. So then as we talk to the whole state, so our group, our administrator group, has an organization, and Steve O'Malley in La Crosse County is our president of this organization. So we've invited him into our group just to say, okay, here's where we're at with this thing. Steve O'Malley is organizing this as a statewide effort. So, there's different regions of the state that are organized. So this meeting of all 72 counties will take place, and then each region will kind of identify their top priority. So we've already told them, this is ours. And then, I didn't mean to say that it's not a priority. We just don't know that because we haven't talked to those other ones, but this is the vehicle where we're all going to get together and talk about what our priorities are.
What's the WCA think about this issue?
Well, we've been working with Kyle and Sarah there too. And that's kind of where this all started. WCA, who represents the counties and has people going to the Capitol and keeping an eye on legislation and whatnot. That comes from the representatives from county board and those kinds of things and those priorities. And our thought is those of us that make up the budget and understand where the problems are in that detail level. Mm-hmm. Same thing like with the levy limits. If I asked you to explain the formula that goes into the levy limits, there's probably 72 people in the state that know what that is because they have to fill out the form where all that calculation happens. And it's like, okay, well, this line doesn't make sense. You don't know that. We know that. We know this is the problem. And if this line was fixed, this would be helpful. Is that going to happen at a county board level? No, it's going to happen at our level who see that level of detail. So that's why we kind of got together as a group and say, we've got to have our priorities known to WCA so that, some of these things can be addressed maybe from a different perspective. Not to say that the county board perspective isn't correct or right or, is wrong, but this is a different way of bringing some things to the state's attention that really affect how we do budgeting.
And I'm all 100% in favor of doing that because my gut feeling is that WCA hasn't been giving this enough attention. People that I've talked to in the WCA have pretty much treated me like our legislators have. Yeah, we'll get back to you. And I see nothing.
Well, Tom, it's hard for me to believe that the other counties haven't experienced this.
Right.
I sit Northwest Regional Planning on that executive committee, and it's all the county board chairs in this whole area. And only a few mention what I do about these out of county placements, just rupturing our budget. You can get one or two people in Winnebago and you're done.
Yeah, so,
imagine what that is. So I'm thinking, why can't all 72 counties pay a premium or some type of insurance? So we all pay into this fund, so we have something to budget for. But you have to pay that premium versus God knows what else is out there, $1 million or whatever it could be.
Yeah, some of the discussion we have revolves around, how things used to be funded by the state and what happened, the legislation that happened that kind of pushed it, to the counties, and going back and looking at how that changed and what can be changed to switch it back the other way. So there's a lot of moving parts to that, and different vehicles for funding it, that we're looking at. So anyway, the point being is, that effort is out there. It's not that we don't realize it's an issue and are trying to address it. Next week as well, we've got the Justice Point people coming in. I believe they'll be out at LCO on Monday, and then we'll be at our CJCC meeting on Tuesday. So that'll be an important step. And I think in between those meetings, Monday morning and Tuesday morning, they'll be talking to probably Rose and I and jail staff about, the hiring process and, getting that thing kicked off so we can make some movement there. So that'll be long overdue. So that's in a nutshell kind of where we're at today. Just trying to get through the budget here through Tuesday. Other questions or comments about other topics or these topics?
Well, the public hearing tonight in the budget, right?
Yes.
We're balancing the budget by borrowing approximately $1 million or issuing debt for $1 million.
That is part of the budget, yes. Mm-hmm.
And then we plan to pay that back, as I said, in finance over 2 years, correct?
Yes.
And what happens, Tom, if in 2022 we need to borrow again? Is that feasible or is that?
Yeah,
something-
and that's-
Are you expecting to?
Yeah, so that was laid out in the debt plan that we talk about in finance. So there was a plan laid out because we've also got a significant debt issue contemplated should the courtroom addition go forward. You know, that would be part of it. And then, you know, capital items in the future, yes, they would be kind of in the same kind of scenario and format. We would identify capital items that could be paid for through a debt issue.
One question I wanted to ask in finance, by us borrowing 1 million, could we have borrowed more? I mean, are there more capital projects out there that we could have
Yes,
issued debt for?
yeah, you know, that not only capital items, but, you know, highway construction projects. I mean, there's certainly a lot of construction that could go that way. Obviously, the more you do, the higher your taxes are going to be. You know, but that's another issue that we talk about, you know, from, you know, the administrators' meetings that we have and looking at the levy limits. You know, we complain about the levy limits and, you know, we need to get the legislators to allow us to work outside the levy limit or do something different with the levy limits. And on the legislators' perspective, they're like, why? Are you in dire straits? Can you not meet payroll? No, we can meet payroll. Well, do you have a fund balance? What's your fund balance? Well, our fund balance is 20%, you know, which is the lower end of our, well, so you got money that you can use. Yeah. You know, have you issued debt for, well, you know, we're just starting to do that. So you've got debt capacity of millions and millions of dollars. So why do we need to give you more money when you've got the ability to raise that yourself? And if you want to exceed the levy limit, do a referendum. And if you want to exceed the levy limit, you can. So, you know, as we argue about, you know, the levy limits, they're saying you've got some tools to use and we're not doing anything about it.
Well, they don't want the accountability.
Yeah, but then as you look at what we are able to fund under the levy limits, and highway construction is certainly one of those, you look at, you know, the roads and the life of a road, and are you replacing those roads or doing those roads over within that period of, you know, when they should be done, or are you doing it 70 years instead of 20 years? And that's where we're at. We're not funding highway as we should because we are under these levy limits. If we truly budgeted for what we should be doing and doing roads as we should and budgeting for mental health costs, you know, that's the balance. You know, we're doing a budget because this is what we can afford, and the legislators are saying, well, see, nobody's missed a paycheck, you don't have a problem.
Back to your question of $1 million, can we borrow more? Yeah, we can, but finance came forward and asked, what do you need this year to balance the budget? And that's the number that came up.
Right. And all the while, our fund balances are all being depleted, correct? Other than,
Well, not all, but I mean, the general fund balance is what we're most concerned about, because especially as you issue debt, like if we do issue debt for the courthouse, that's, you know, a few $1 million. And so then you do a bond issue and you need a bond rating. And one of the things they look at when they rate you for bonds is your financial condition. And part of that is a healthy fund balance. And if you've got a healthy fund balance, you'll get a better interest rate than if you're potentially not able to repay the debt that you're going to issue bonds for. So, you know, that's why it's important to have a healthy fund balance and a healthy budgeting scheme so that when you do need to issue debt, you can do it affordably and not have to pay a higher interest rate because you're in dire straits.
I remember Clifton Allen Larson mentioned that in their audit report, that we did have a healthy fund balance, but that it was leaning to the slim end.
Right. So, you know, and trying to protect that fund balance, that's why, you know, some of the things we looked at, like the HRA, it's like, okay, if we make this change to the HRA, that doesn't accumulate this large liability that takes away from that unallocated fund balance. So this is a way that we can help protect that fund balance without causing too much pain to employees in doing that. But that's the balancing act.
So in this budget that we're headed to approve, were there any severe cuts or anything you know, that's why I wanted to look at that, Tom. Were there any huge changes?
The huge, yeah, nothing huge. I think, you know, on the highway side, we did use some fund balances we've had the last couple of years to balance that end of it. We did eliminate one full-time position in highway. Last year, we had an open position and we use a limited term employees. You know, they're staffed for snow plowing, you know, so if we can get through snow plowing season, you know, with a limited term employee, you know, and save money in the rest of the year, you know, that was something that I think Gary would agree worked out well last year. And so we're proceeding with that this year. On the Health and Human Services side, you know, there was a couple of positions that we eliminated that they suggested eliminated, which we then put in the budget to balance the budget. So those are probably the most significant changes service-wise.
Tom, on this report that finance gave us,
Yes.
it looks like that we can expect in 2021 that taxes are obviously going up, right? We're
Yes.
going from a 2020 actual levy of 1.9 to a 2021 of 5.
I'm not sure what you're referring to there.
Oh, the actual change in levy limit.
The
Percent, I'm sorry, percent of
that's
change.
what we
So what, so there's gonna be an increase in taxes,
Yes.
obviously, with borrowing this money and just. So we can tell all of our constituents that expect taxes to go up, but we're keeping remaining with all the services, and we don't even know if we're gonna build a second courtroom yet. Because this doesn't include the second courtroom.
The 21 budget does not contemplate changes for an additional courtroom, but there is in that plan the contemplation of a debt issue should that proceed. Yes.
Okay. Anyone else for Tom? Mr. Duffy?
It should be noted too, as you talk about the courtroom, you know, we are basing our planning on, you know, the resolution passed by the board that said you are proceeding and allocating resources to that. So, you know, we are continuing that plan. And then once the city adopts, should they adopt that agreement that, you know, we've got a handshake on, then we proceed with further planning of that courtroom. So we are prepared to get that Second Circuit Court. And, you know, if you want to stop the bus, you can stop the bus, but the bus is moving, so.
Okay, anything else for Tom?
So where are we at with the public health ordinance?
That was tabled for 2 months, which puts us into January.
Yeah.
So we do have a public health ordinance. We are contemplating changes to that ordinance that would allow governmental oversight or your oversight to any local order that came out. So the local health officer still has the ability to do orders, isn't contemplating anything currently, but she does have that authority currently.
So we talked about this last month, about the need to try to address this sooner than later because 3 months was going to be too long. Have we lost the steam with that, with the election fatigue? Mr. Schuman?
Maybe, we've discussed it in Health and Human Services and we're,
Well, you know that public health ordinance is also under the public safety agenda. So, I mean, there should be some kind of coordination or discussion. I had
Right.
40 people 2 meetings ago showing up about this. That issue hasn't gone away because of election fatigue, and cherry picking when we're going to address that is not going to be wise. So we should have a discussion. I mean, I asked if we could have a public hearing on this ordinance so that people could actually talk about this without having to, you know, take their 3 minutes of public comment trying to address that. So, I mean, if public health, if Health and Human Services is going to do that, then I'm going to put that on the public safety agenda for next month.
well, I think it falls under the jurisdiction of public.
I know you think that, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to put it on the public safety agenda if we don't get any movement on this. So,
Mr. Slater?
We did have a public hearing on this.
You had a hearing on it. You were at your county board meeting.
Yes, we had a hearing on
No?
it, okay? And overwhelmingly, people were opposed to it.
Right.
Never mind for the wrong reasons. We decided to wait, regroup, and I think that was a good decision. And I think people now feel like the governor has become more aggressive in his mandates, and we still need to keep an eye on those. One of the reasons that our public health nurse is moving cautiously is she does not want to begin to implement an onerous mandate for Sawyer County and then have the governor or the Supreme Court wipe it out the next day. That makes her department seem unorganized, which it is anything but. So I'm in favor of letting this ride for a while. I'm not in favor of getting different committees or boards opposed to each other or arguing about it month after month. I think the Board of Health, the Department of Health and Human Services, and Julia and Pat are very capable of handling this and reporting what they are doing to the county board. And if you want to report to public safety, that would be one thing. But getting involved and requesting another hearing through public safety, I think would be unwarranted.
The only reason why I say that is because it was 3 months ago or 3 or 4 months ago, when public safety had edits made to the health ordinance that were sent to corporate council and never came back to committee. And my instructions were is that, well, Health and Human Services took it over because they felt it was their jurisdiction. So if it started with us and then it was taken away from us without consultation, I'm a little bit going to be a little bit more animated about that, because we can't talk about respecting jurisdictions when we're not having conversations about jurisdictions. And I asked for 3 things. One was a public hearing, because that was what the people in the public safety meeting had asked for. The second one was, I asked you, Mr. Schuman, that we should be forming a committee of chairmen so that we can have, or chairs, so that we can have this discussion like what Mr. Schlueter is saying. I appreciate his information and I appreciate the position that Health and Human Services. I'm still going to get people showing up at the public safety meeting, regardless of whatever the decisions are between you and Mr. Schlueter. So I need to have those answers anyway. And then the third one is the information that's coming out, as Mr. Schlueter can definitely attest to, is erroneous. And it's putting the county employees in a position where they're almost feeling like they're defenseless. Like they're the ones that have to respond to all of this. And Julia Lyons is not even a department head. She's just a public health officer who reports to then Verhoeven, who then reports to Tom, who then reports to us. And so when we're leaving frontline employees on their own, I think that's a lack of leadership on our part, and we should be aggressively in front of them so that they are not carrying the burden. She's being accused of everything from being a non-county resident to all sorts of different things that are just malicious and just horrible. And for her to be subject to this stuff, and we're waiting, to see how things play out, that's a failure of leadership on our part.
Well, you're welcome to see the edits that we had, we made, right, at Health and Human Services. And it was just motion that we table it for a few months, and it just, because of the election and all everything that was going on with that, we just decided we'll bring it up later. And I think I will ask Dale to put it back on Health and Human Services with Julia present and see where we want to go with it. Yeah.
I'll give you 1 month and then I'll put it on public safety.
I think it's an example of leadership, knowing when to be forceful and aggressive and knowing when not to be forceful and aggressive. That's leadership. I do object to you using the word erroneous when you were speaking, because they have not made any erroneous movements. They have made movements that have been canceled by the government, but that's just because they were trying to do the best possible for the people of Sawyer
I was talking about
County.
the erroneous comments coming from the community about the public health officer.
Oh, erroneous, yes, I agree with you 100%, and I apologize for misunderstanding that. To me, the greatest farce of that public hearing was the very thing that they were arguing against, passage of the ordinance, was the one thing that would have actually reined in some of Julia's abilities.
I agree.
Right.
They fought
And since-
tooth and nail against what they really wanted.
And since law enforcement is being attached or trying not to be attached or is being mentioned in terms of the enforcement capacity as well as some of the other areas, I don't know how you cannot say that public safety shouldn't be involved. So, I mean, I'll give you guys a month to kind of sort your stuff out, and then it's gonna go on the January agenda, which is in line with what your guys' 2 months period is, because I am
Yeah, I
got to
understand.
change
We're
my
gonna-
email address because I got the library, I got the Second Amendment, I got the public health ordinance, all of these things, and people are asking for questions and no one's giving any answers except for our website crashed, which, played over like gangbusters.
Well,
when that
we'll put
happened.
the public health ordinance back on health and human services and discuss it further.
The library,
Yeah, I got, I'm becoming the anti-library person for the county.
well, who said that? That's not true.
That's, well, there's a specific person that started a campaign, but there has been, there's a Facebook campaign about the discussion of the library limits and how I am trying to either shut down the public library or interfere with the public library system. And we are trying to figure out, because we have 4
We're getting
libraries
off
that
the
operate in
agenda here, though,
Wisconsin.
guys.
What's that?
We're getting off the agenda.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Anything else for Tom's county administrative report?
Tom, did you get any comments about the library?
I have not from the public. I have been, I had some conversations with the librarians, but not anything about what you're talking about. The Hayward Library is currently closed for 2 weeks. That's the kind of correspondence I've had.
Okay, anything else for Tom?
Just one other comment, if you're trying to shut things down, why don't you shut down Facebook for a while if you could? Put that on your plate.
I shut it down on my computer.
That would be helpful.
Okay, any future agenda items?
Well, I think you should put public health ordinance on there.
Yeah, thank you. I was just gonna list that.
And I think that, Mr. Chairman, you should
I would like to hear from
consider-
this committee,
strongly
because I want to
consider.
hear from Mr. Duffy and Mr. Kinsley and how they feel where this should go first and who should be involved. Okay, anything else? Other matters for discussion only?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
Public safety, are we looking to change the time when they meet, or can you give a little explanation there, please?
Yep, we're going from 8:30 to 9 o'clock. One of our board members has some pressing duties that happen right around the 8:30 mark. And so we're going to try for December and January, starting at 9 o'clock instead of 8:30. The other alternative was to start in the afternoon. Is it Wednesdays or Mondays or something? You remember?
Well, I don't think we went that far, but.
So, but there was a discussion about that, so.
Yeah,
Because we had a new member come in and one had outstanding issue from a previous member, it was just a discussion point, so we changed it from 8:30 to 9. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? If not, we're adjourned and we'll see you this evening. 30. Thank you.
Dale, do you have-